from Ohio. Senator, if you were standing in Wall Street with the Occupy, and let me finish tonight with the need to watch the Wall Street protesters and listen to them for solutions. Let's begin with the Occupy Wall Street protests themselves. Senator Sherrod Brown is a Democrat from Ohio. Senator, if you were standing in Wall Street with the Occupy Wall Street people, what placard would you be holding up in the air?
Well, that's a good question. I just think that for the president to be on our side in the end. And I mean, this isn't a liberal, conservative, left to right. It's whose side are you on? And the president's starting to fight more than he did. That's a good sign. I think the energy coming out of the Wall Street protesters is always a good thing. When people nonviolently speak out and stand for something, it's good to challenge authority when they do that.
Do you think they want reform or they want structural change, the kind of stuff I grew up with and you grew up with, which is a real argument about what kind of a system of economy we have in this country? Is this for structural change, radical change, like the way profits go to different corporations or the way people get jobs? Is it systemic, or do they just want things fixed a little? I'm curious. What do you think?
Well, I don't think they want minor reforms. I think that, I mean, you remember during the banking bill, one of the Brown-Kaufman amendment would have basically said those banks that have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, the biggest 6 banks in the country, should have been broken up into smaller banks. It would have, instead of the power again accruing at the top. We saw what happened this week when some of the largest banks in the country added additional charges quietly, sort of underhandedly, to some of the veterans that were refinancing their homes. And those kinds of things are still going on. So minor changes at the edge are not what people want. And I think that, you know, having Rich Cordray in as the Consumer Protection Bureau chief, things like that are really going to make the big banks and make others behave the way they're supposed to.
Well, do you think corporations are like Mitt Romney says they are? They're just people like us. Do you think they operate in the national interest or the interest of working people? When corporate boards meet and make decisions about automating and getting rid of employees, or make decisions about investing overseas and not here, do you think they make decisions in the interest of patriotism or just cash? What do you think?
Well, I think they're operating. I mean, I remember the CEO of one major company, it may have been GE, it might have been Dow, I can't remember, a few years ago, said I could wish I could move my corporate headquarters to a barge off the coast so I wouldn't have to be beholden to any country. And I mean, I understand that. If that's the way they are, then we treat them that way, and that is that we treat them fairly but firmly on taxes and other things. And you know, when we give tax breaks for companies that move overseas, there's something wrong with that. Earlier today, I was at Miracle Scottsgrow, a company in sort of central Ohio. And one guy said, this guy is management. He said, what are we going to do to help the middle class here? We're seeing middle class wages decline. We're seeing manufacturing move jobs offshore. Yeah. And I think that's what these protests on Wall Street are all about. They're standing up, not just for the middle class, but for working people who aspire to be middle class. And that is getting a fair shake from companies and getting a fair shake from their government. They don't feel like they are, clearly.
Yeah, I think they're there to stay. I think this is going to be as big as, maybe not as big as Egypt, but I think this is going to be permanent in our politics all through the next election. These people have got their act together more than I think the Democratic Party does these days. Anyway, let's look at this Values Voters Summit today. Republican Majority Leader Eric Cantor denounced the Occupy Wall Street movement. Let's listen to his angle.
I, for one, am increasingly concerned about the growing mobs occupying Wall Street and the other cities across the country. And believe it or not, some in this town have actually condoned the pitting of Americans against Americans.
Such babbitry. Why do you think he instinctively, no, really, it is like the old stuff, Sinclair Lewis. I mean, here's a guy speaking to the people of Main Street about the evils of the little people outside their windows. I mean, why do you think the Republican Party instinctively dumps on people who are out of work, people who are simply in an American way raising their voices?
Well, it's the same people on the Republican, on the far right, that anytime we talk about a tax increase for somebody making $1 million a year, anytime we talk about challenging the banks or challenging big insurance companies, or people protest peacefully in Wall Street, they say class warfare, class warfare. Well, as you know, and as you've talked on this show, Chris, many times, the class warfare has been aimed by interests, the biggest, wealthiest interest groups in the country, aimed at the middle class. And unfortunately, the middle class far too often losing on this class warfare coming from the most well-heeled interest groups in Washington. And that's why they're fighting back. That's why we're fighting back. That's why you fight back on this show, to just give everybody an equal chance. And when Eric Cantor does that, he shows his true stripes.
Anyway, thank you so much. I'm with you, by the way. I think you're a great senator. Thank you, Sherrod Brown of Ohio.
Thanks,
Michael
Chris.
Mulgrew is
Appreciate that.
president of the United Federation of Teachers.